and the crowd was ecstatic. And he was announced as Pope Francis.
No pope had taken that name. It was kind of almost thought to be a taboo, and it's kind of been the guiding posts for this papacy. The Pope who cares about the poor, the Pope who cares about the environment.
So the choice of the name Francis was in a way programmatic of the mission. Saint Francis was a man so close to the people, to the natural world.
Reform, but with this idea that the reform begins and the call for the church is to put at the center those who are far away, who are the most suffering and the poorest.
And in changing things, there can be difficulty, there can be resistance, there can be opposition. But you still have to change things. And changing things because there are resistance or opposition doesn't make you rebellious of anything. I see him carrying on a mandate.
I believe that Pope Francis was called to rebuild, like St. Francis, this house. And this house is our planetary home, our common home, and our common human family.
This Pope is, above all, the Pope of the unexpected. He's the Pope of surprises. Nobody knows quite what he's going to do next.
But Pope Francis decided he would officiate at a juvenile detention center in Rome. The Pope washed the feet of 12 teens from all religions, including 2 Muslims. Another surprise was that among the 12 were 2 girls.
What really makes us fully human is our capacity for empathy. And Pope Francis is a great example of that.
Come vorrei una chiesa povera e per I poveri.
When the Pope speaks, he speaks with the voice of not only himself and of the Catholic faith, but of 1 billion plus believers. 25% of the healthcare in the world is provided by the Catholic Church. And so their network is almost unrivaled around the world.
He's so at home with the poor. He's joyful, he listens to them, and what really struck me also was here he has really brought in a revolution of tenderness.
Francis has made clear that during this holy year he will continue to champion the poor, the marginalized, and the oppressed.
The area he comes from is an area with incredible challenges of poverty, of global warming challenges. He's the first pope in over 1,000 years who's non-European. He is clearly a son of Argentina.
Jorge Bergoglio grew up in a family which was pretty poor. I mean, it wasn't destitute in any way, but it was very lower middle class. He grew up as the child of immigrants in Buenos Aires. So from the very beginning, he grew up with the stories of poverty, of displacement, which characterized the immigrant story.
His grandparents had come from northern Italy, the Piedmont region. And clearly this impact of watching his grandparents adapt to a new life has had a significant impact on his life and has left him with a sincere understanding of the difficulty migrants go through.
Tens of thousands of refugees and migrants risk the perilous voyage on barely seaworthy vessels that ply the waters between Lampedusa and the North African coast.
His first trip as Pope was in Lampedusa to be with refugees and migrants who are suffering.
And they're in these camps, and Pope Francis is there.
He took some families to the Vatican so that they could be accommodated here in Rome. So he's speaking also with his gestures, with his way of being.
Let us treat others with the same
passion and compassion with which we want to be treated.
More and more, we're realizing migrations over the last 10 years and 20 years even, as a result of horrendous environmental problems. There are well over 100 million climate and environmental refugees now. And by 2050, they think 1.3 billion people will be part of this migration community.
He felt the pain, he understood, this is God's creation. So he connects it with the climate crisis to human suffering.
Since his rise to head of the Catholic Church, Pope Francis's papacy has been nothing short of transformative. No issue has captured his attention more than the dire fate of our warming planet.
Called Laudato Si, or Praised Be, on the care of our common home, Pope Francis's encyclical on the moral aspects of climate change and protecting the environment.
Laudato Si is one of the most important documents of our lifetime. It's an encyclical, which means a letter to Catholics, Christians, and all religions, and people without faith.
The central message in the Laudato Si is the human person and his world.
It's considered a very important teaching document, and what he has done is absolutely elicit and spark a new moral force of justice for people and care for the environment.
This is the biggest emergency that humanity has ever faced.
It was quite powerful that the Pope, in the highest leader of the Catholic Church, the leader of 1.3 billion Catholics around the world, said quite clearly, no, this is happening, it's real, we need to do something about it.
Science has facts, but we need values, and we need the sense of how do we inspire and encourage humans in their daily life, in their sufferings, in their trials, and so on. So that combination has made the Pope quite unique.
Being from Latin America, being from a country like Argentina, and what he has had to live through that have taught him to be the man he is today.
If you really want to understand Pope Francis, you need to understand that he has been shaped also by the process done in Latin America.
And to understand that is to understand a large part about what makes Pope Francis so distinctive. He brings with him the experience of his nation, but also of the Church of Latin America. Here is a man who understands the vulnerability and the chaos of people's lives and has the experience of entering into that.
Argentina, the second largest country in South America, faces an uncertain future. The military has overthrown President Perón after the nation's economy spiraled out of control. Perón, the savior of workers and the poor, has been sent into exile, but promises one day he will return and lead Argentina to become a world power.
The young Jorge Mario Bergoglio, as a teenager, grew up in the 1950s in a time of great political ferment.
Pope Francis has worked as chemist in Buenos Aires. I think it's interesting that before entering the Jesuits, he had an experience as a young guy, an experience of work. So we can say he had an experience of life. He was not trained in a minor seminary since the age of 12.
Jorge?
Huh?
Are you going to the tango bar after work?
Of course. Sí, tuvo una novia sí, tuvo alguna chica. Pero bueno, él era muy cuidadoso con su vida. Hay cosas que eran muy personales de él y por ahí no las transmitía.
Señora Esther.
Thank you.
Esther Ballesteros de Careaga was a Paraguayan woman who worked alongside him in the chemistry laboratory. She was a militant, a left-winger, and he deeply loved and admired her.
Did you analyze the final batch?
The results were the same for all the batches. So I assumed the results would be the same for the final batch.
What if your assumption is wrong? What if the final batch is different? What if there is an impurity? This is your job, Jorge. You're paid to do analysis, not to guess.
I'm sorry, Señora Esther.
When you become a doctor, remember, mistakes cost lives.
This Pope had an experience of working in science and became the first Pope to clearly enunciate the Church's agreement with the scientific consensus that there is global warming, that the planet is going through something catastrophic that needs to be addressed.
Non può e non deve esistere contrapposizione tra la fede e la scienza.
It is the philosopher Francis Bacon, who says that God gave us two books. The book of the Bible to pray with, and the book of nature to research and to discover Him in the wisdom and everything that is made. So, for us then, that is the first term. Science is not opposed to faith. There are two pathways towards the same truth.
Pope Francis realized that we need to listen to the scientists. And scientists have been speaking about this for more than 50 or 60 years. I think of Rachel Carson.
1962, the silence praying, and not just the climate crisis, but the fact that we are destroying our common home. If we want to respond to the ecological crisis, the cry of the earth, we need to respond to the cry of the poor. That's why Pope Francis says, it is one. The cry of the earth are closely, intimately linked.